Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. As we are just letting a couple more folks into the room, why don't you drop your name, what state you're from, and how do you make a difference with students? That means just Shiro, a fancy way of saying it. Let us know where you're coming in from. I see New York in the house. Come on. Where are you from? Hawaii. Indonesia. Welcome. You share your name, your city, your state, what's your role, and just your PBL experience. Shout out to all the international folks in the room. I see Las Vegas, Miami is in the house. Awesome. All right, welcome everyone, welcome. We are going to get started and we are so excited that you are here for our very first PBL Power Up series. Man, I wish all of my panelists just can come off mute just for a second. Let's give a great quick shout out to all the folks that are in the room. Welcome, welcome.
Good afternoon, good evening to y'all. How y'all doing?
Hello. Well, welcome. As we are getting started, we're just gonna Oh, I love that, Bob. Hello. Hello. Do some quick introductions to get us started on this evening. Just relax as you come in. For those who have not shared, tell us where you're from, share your name, also your PBL experience and your role. That all of those things are important to us as we go through today's webinar. So let's get started really quickly. I am going to kick it off to Bob to introduce himself, and then we will go on to Ari after that.
All right. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, people from all over the world and across the United States. I'm Bob Lenz. I'm the proud CEO of PBL Works and honored to be part of this great team that you're going to hear from today.
What's up, everybody? My name is Ari Dolid. My pronouns are he, him. I am in Oakland, California, and I am one of two directors of curriculum design here at PBL Works.
And I am Talena Norfar, also known as T. I am the other director of curriculum here at PBL Works, and I'm so excited to see you guys.
And how's everybody doing? My name is Brian Dimerson, one of the lead national faculty here at PBL Works, particularly working on the math side, but I work on all things, everything, and I just love connecting with teachers. So here we go. Let's get to it, y'all.
Thank you to all of our PBL experts. I am Dr. Lucretia Terrence, and I am the Director of District Engagement here at PBL Works.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you today. I'm John Larmer, a senior fellow here at PBL Works.
Thank you, John. So let's jump right into today's session. A little bit about PBL Works before we get started. For those who may not know, at PBL Works, our exclusive focus is project-based learning. Why? Because we feel PBL advances educational equity and empowers youth fathers from opportunity. We truly believe that PBL is transformative for all kids, all students. Through PBL, students get a chance to engage in learning that is deep, long-lasting, and relevant to the challenges of their lives and the world that they would eventually inherit. And so research has truly confirmed this for us. Let's take a minute to frame our experience for today. Throughout today's experience, you will have the opportunity to hear from some of the top PBL experts, at least the ones that I know, right? They're going to share about their PBL experiences, their stories from the field. And our hope is that every teacher, every instructional coach, curriculum designer, school leader, district leader, whatever capacity that you serve, that you are able to take away something new from our discussions around how do we do PBL, project-based learning, in the classroom. Turn it over to my co-host, John.
All right, thanks, Lucretia. Our vision at PBL Works is for all students, especially Black and Brown students, to engage in high-quality project-based learning, to deepen their learning and achieve success in college, career, and life. And we say this because we know that students who experience high-quality PBL will develop both the content knowledge, deeper learning, and success skills like communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking, and so forth. They'll also develop a stronger sense of self and agency and begin to see how they can contribute to their families and communities by applying knowledge and success skills in ways that make an authentic difference. This is our model for gold standard project-based learning. We believe that we want to really support teachers designing high-quality projects. So we developed this model a few years ago to help accomplish that goal. On the left, you see the essential project design elements. In the center, of course, are the learning goals we want for students. And on the right are the project-based teaching practices. And there's a lot of overlap with those, as you can see, with traditional teaching, but there are some special features for project-based teaching. I won't go over that in detail. You can find out more on our website. But let me just talk briefly about our equity levers. We have 4 levers for equity, and there are many reasons for implementing project-based learning. And we want to highlight how we see PBL as a key to creating more equitable learning environments and outcomes for students. We know that gold standard PBL, when it's implemented with an intentional equity focus, is a powerful way to work towards educational equity. And over the past several years, our team has been exploring the question, what are the specific mindsets and priorities that PBL teachers can leverage to provide equity-centered and impactful learning experiences for all students? These 4 levers amplify the power of the central project design elements and the PBL teaching practices and ensure they're used in ways that reach all learners. All right, Lucretia, back to you for our driving question.
Thank you, John. Now the most anticipated moment of the hour, at least the moment I'm most excited about, and that's hearing about the PBL experience and the stories from the field about project-based learning. We're going to use this driving question to drive our thinking and drive our conversation as we go throughout the rest of our time together today. And so that driving question is, how can educators successfully implement and sustain a project-based learning classroom to enhance student engagement and achievement? So I want our panelists to really dig deep and think about, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see their wonderful faces, of course. And we're going to kick off with Brian. Right. So, Brian, as you reflect upon that question, and I want you to think about it, do you mind just kind of kicking off our conversation by sharing from a teacher perspective your story of how you became a PBL teacher, and then just how those projects impacted your students?
Yeah, absolutely. Really got to start off just a story about how I became a teacher, right? I really got into teaching because I just really wanted to impact students for life beyond the classroom. In my mind, I just view whenever I was going to school for education for education to be bigger than the test. I even wrote on my educational philosophy in one of my teacher classes that I want to prepare students beyond the content for life, beyond the school walls. So that was the goal. I was the kid that kept a lot of teachers up at night as a student. I was the kid that had C's and D's, things like that. So I was that kid that I wasn't disrespectful because mama wasn't playing that, but I was the kid that just was apathetic. So whenever I got into teaching, I wanted to impact those type of students that just weren't playing school because I wasn't playing school whenever I was a student. So that was the goal. So then when I got into teaching, I went onto a great campus, passionate teachers, passionate educators, about 90% low SES, but man, we was locked in doing our thing, but we had a lot of state mandates that we had to achieve because we had some achievement issues. So my lofty goal for preparing kids for life outside the classroom really became get these kids to pass this test. That's really what it became. And so you get warped. I got warped into that type of thinking, that type of mind frame, and I was good at it. I was good at I can get a kid to grow from year to year. I can get a kid to pass a test. And it became really a badge of honor for me. It became, a go-to type of person to be able to accomplish that on behalf of the campus. About 5 years into that, it got old. It got old starting the year off, and all you hear is the Super Bowl of the year is this state test. And it got old. Although I was good at it, it became unfulfilling really fast. Such that I was actually considering moving on from the teaching environment. So I knew something had to give. Even beyond that, my kids were growing, but I remember one time a kid cried in my arms because although she grew, she felt as though she let me down because she didn't pass. And that's when I realized my whole messaging, my whole flow is not even resonating with what I know I care about kids. Around that same time, my campus started a STEM program, which our content teachers were going to be teaching through project-based learning. So I got wind of project-based learning, but truth be told, for me, I thought it was one of those extra things. I even called it a dog and pony show. I called it bells and whistles. So I say that was my thought process because I looked at it as something, although my heart knew I wanted to do something different, my mind was still locked in on getting these kids to pass tests. And so I was kind of caught in that middle type of situation. But I had a great instructional coach, STEM coach that really walked with me. I had great colleagues that walked with me. And when I did that first project, it was a simple project. It was kids using linear relationships to make billboards. Like very simple project in hindsight, but the creativity, the thinking that those kids. I'm sorry.
You got excited. It's all good.
Yeah. The thinking that those kids went through on that project, it just changed me. And it made me really think about like, what if I did this? And what if I did that? What if I did that? So now it's me and these students constantly thinking about how can we push the envelope? And that's when the wheels started turning for me. That's when I got locked in. And the things that those kids came to do, the fact that we were no longer talking about grades, but yet the achievement was still there, but it was the impact, it was the connectivity, it was the critical thinking, it was the overcoming adversity. All these things were happening, and I was getting excited because I was on the journey with them, and the achievement was still there. We still was locked in achieving high test scores. It's just that the way we did it, and I was able to prepare kids for life in school, but able to prepare kids for life outside of school. So I was locked in after that.
Thank you. One other thing I'm thinking about as before we jump to Talena, and she's going to talk about how she supported that work. What is one myth that you had to debunk as a teacher when you decided to do project-based learning in your classroom?
Yeah, that's a good one. It wasn't an either or, and that was the biggest thing was you can, as a matter of fact, you're responsible for guiding kids towards high achievement, right? However, you don't have to do it absent of meaningful learning experiences. And so that was the biggest thing that I didn't have to choose between the two, which was good for me because I didn't want to choose between the two. And so once I figured out how to marry the two together, that was what really locked me in all the way. Second thing is, this is bonus for you just because you asked a great question. Second thing was, my thought process was, I thought that initially that I had to be a project-based learning teacher, but then be a regular teacher. But once I realized how to marry some of those same skills, and again, I had great coaching that helped me along the way to how can I marry some of these same skills from day one throughout the year, such that kids didn't know when we were in a quote unquote project experience versus not a project experience, because we were just critical thinking every day. We was communicating every day. Like that was just the way we ran our class. It's just that every now and then I would throw a challenge question in the form of a project-based learning experience in them. So those were kind of the two things that I had to deep that once I got clarity on how to make it work year round, and once I got clarity that it wasn't an either or engagement or achievement, that's when I was ready to dance. And I did dance, for the record.
All right. All right. Thanks, Brian. Telena, I want to ask you a question. I know you've had some opportunity to support teachers in designing and implementing project-based learning. So can you share some of your experiences as a instructional coach for PBL and any tips you might offer?
Yeah, John, and I want to piggyback on Brian because like he set it off. So we can almost go home. We've just had church. But I want to emphasize this through the lens of something that he brought up. Because whether you're a coach, like I was a coach, I've been a coach for a little bit. I was also a department chair for a long time. And just a teacher leader in general. So for those of you in the chat or joining via our streaming, know that like you are a person who's possibly coaching, and you're gonna have some Brians, but you also gonna have some Geralds, you're gonna have some Lisas, you're gonna have some Marthas. Like these are all different type of people on the continuum of where they're at when you're coming alongside them. That's literally what I always impress upon people. When you are trying to help people go into PBL, you need to come alongside them and understand where they're at. They're not all going to be excited like Brian. Some of them are going to be like, I'm closing in on retirement. Some of them are going to be like, I'm trying to just make it day to day. I don't even know where the copy machine is. Like everybody's going to be at different places. So come alongside and understand their needs. And the thing that I love the most is this article we have called the dimmer switch. And so the dimmer switch is basically how you approach day-to-day teaching. You don't have to always do PBL, as Brian was mentioning. It's not an either or thing. You can dim down some of the things that you're doing and basically rise up other elements. So I usually like to ask teachers who I was helping, I was like, well, what's a problem? What's a problem you're having right now? What's the issue you're dealing with? And then use the elements to help deal with the issue. So maybe they're having trouble with kids really like engaging. You know, that's like one of those buzzwords we love to throw around. They're not engaged. Well, let's look at student voice and choice. Like, how can we start having some voice and choice inside of every lesson every day? Because that's really what will get somebody to be engaged. If we really think about it, nobody wants to do just anything. But if you have some choice in the matter, if you have a voice in the matter, you're more likely to do those particular things. Or maybe you're needing, like you're an English teacher, you're a history teacher, and you're really wanting kids to think deeply and think about reflection. Add how can you have different sort of strategies, like a whole group discussion? How could you have times where you're like just write on a sheet of paper and do the snowball technique where everybody throws it in the middle of the room and then you read someone else's thought? Like again, small things make a big difference. And then build that up to the PBL for those who are struggling. And then those who are ready to take off like Brian, fly with all of our elements. Let them fly and support them and go to the copy machine for them. I was a copy machine runner to help the teachers do what they need to do in the classroom or help them get that public audience that they need for the end of the project. Those little things go a long way.
Elena, I have a follow-up question. As an instructional coach, did some teachers sometimes say to you, I can't do PBL, it's too big of a shift. It sounds too like such a big change in my practice. And they were kind of afraid to try PBL. How do you respond to that concern?
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, John, it's like you knew my life. Everybody said I can't. Like it really didn't even matter what we might be working on. can't was a common thing that comes out of people's mouth. And so what I discovered is it's not that they really believe that they can't, they're having a time figuring out how they can fit it in. We are so consumed, especially post-COVID. I do not know how many of you who are in the Zoom right now or joining us who taught before COVID and after, but you probably remember it being a little bit easier than it is right now. And so what you got to do is, again, acknowledge that it's about where they're at. They're having trouble with figuring out how to fit it in. And so, again, I approached them. I was like, oh, I get you. I get you. It is hard. Again, let's look at an element. How can we possibly deal with just one thing that we have trouble with, that we know we need to accomplish or that we want to accomplish? And let's start there. We don't have to bite the whole elephant. We can eat it one bite at a time. And so emphasize that it's a journey, not a destination. As long as you keep walking on this road and we keep looking at this sunrise together, we're on the right track. It doesn't have to be that you're doing all of the beautiful things immediately at once. One little change makes a whole lot of difference.
Okay. All right, thanks. Let me turn to Ari. Ari, my question to you is about how teachers can get started with project-based learning with pre-designed curriculum or designing their own. But what are you suggesting for teachers who want to start on this journey Talena's talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I remember when I was designing units for myself, or projects for myself, with colleagues, one of the most fun things that we got to do was sit around and talk about that thing at the end. Like, because we had so much imagination. We saw our students, we saw all the assets and all the strengths that our students brought in. And we thought, oh my God, wouldn't it be cool if our students could do this? Or there was something going on in the community or in the newspaper. And we were like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if our students could like work with these people and do this thing? And we got so caught up in that enthusiasm of that final product and the final exhibition and the thing, and our vision and our imagination was right there. And I would say the next thing we did, which is a key move for me, is to make sure that that big idea that we have that is going to match up with the learning goals that we have in our classroom for our students. And I was listening to Brian, and one of the things that Brian said when he talked about the first project he did, he said it was simple, linear relationships to design a billboard. And I could hear when he said that, he knew exactly what the learning goals were. Linear relationships was the key mathematical concept that he was using, and the project was the vehicle to teach that concept. And so for me, in my work designing these project-based units that we're working on at PBL Works, standards are the center for us, are part of those learning goals, right? In the center of our framework that you showed, John, it's key understandings, success skills, right? So standards are that for us. And I would say the first thing to do to have a really successful first project is to narrow. We don't need 6 or 7 standards as part of our first project. We need like 1 or 2 really strong, appropriate central standards, because there's all this amazing stuff that comes along with it, right? When kids are reflecting, they're deepening in their standards. When they're critiquing and revising, they're deepening in their understanding of those standards. And that stuff takes time. And when you add on lots of standards, it's just going to get so big and so big, so big. So to be really focused and to figure out what those standards are, and then to even figure out what those standards mean to you. And one of the ways that we do that when we're designing our project units here at PBL Works is we prototype. We figure out, okay, what is that billboard supposed to look like? And how are linear relationships? Or when I want kids to develop a claim, well, what does that look like for a 6th grader? And what does it look like for my 6th graders to be able to develop a strong, defensible, nuanced claim? What does that sound like? The only way I'm going to really figure out what that is supposed to look like and sound like is by prototyping it. And so I'm going to try to make my own version of that final product, whether it be a billboard or a museum exhibit with all the little labels and things, right? I'm going to make that, and I'm going to make sure that when I figure out like what my sixth graders are, how they're writing it, and they're writing those claims, I'm going to make sure that it all sounds right for my students and what I actually expect from them at the end of this course or at the end of this school year or at the end of the project. And that prototyping helps me know whether this project is going to work. So narrowing standards, prototyping products, and then I'll give you one more, John. And it builds on what Brian and Talena were saying, is that dimmer switch, starting with some core routines. So in the project-based units that we're designing, we've got core routines that are student-centered routines like think, pair, share, and chalk talk, and investigation routines in the science units, and connect, extend, challenge in the social studies units, right? Rough draft sharing in the math units. These are routines that you can get your students started with right now, tomorrow. And by practicing them all the time, when you get to a project, they will be so familiar with these routines that when they encounter really complex tasks, they will have a set of cognitive strategies and routines to help them navigate through that complexity, right? And that's how the project becomes more successful.
Wow, thank you, Ari. So many great nuggets from teacher to instructional coach. You kind of seen how the coherence is happening, how the support is happening on one side. We're building, we're designing projects. And so that takes me to Bob. And so Bob, as a school leader, I know that it's really important to have those conditions set, right? As a principal, as a district, to build the coherence so that school leaders have the support that they need. Can you share with us what does that support look like? How do we build capacity? How do we build conditions to support all the work that the other three panelists talked about?
Sure thing, Lucretia. You know, one of the things when as I've had experience of when we've done some work with schools or in broader systems and just work with the school teachers, and they do the workshops are with our national faculty, and they're fired up and they're ready to go, and they get going with their project, and I like to say then school happens. And sometimes, you know, and sometimes that means that could be the principal comes in who hasn't been part of the workshops, and you know, but wants the PBL to happen in their school, the outcomes, but they see kids in student-centered learning activities, and it's not quiet. They're actively engaged in problem solving and collaborating, and that's different than what we've always known as what on task means. They're definitely on task, but it's not the same as what a principal was trained in, to go in and say, well, everybody's got their pens out and their notebooks and they're listening to the teacher. And so teachers are like, hey, I need my principal to understand what that looks like when we're actually moving that way. Or they're getting the students ready for the presentation of learning, the exhibition. Everybody's excited. And then the district announces like, oh, we forgot to tell you the benchmark testing is going to be that week. And everything goes, you know, they're like, well, how do I tell the kids they're getting ready for this, or everything's going to happen? And so that coherence, those little things make a big difference in making things happen. When, you know, for me and as we've worked with school leaders all across the country and across the world, we really start with like, what's your why? Like, why project-based learning? It's really important that the leader know and have that vision of why we're doing this work and deep work, so that teachers know the why, and students and their parents know why we're making this move to go deep with learning, to not only master knowledge and skills, but to be able to apply it and demonstrate our understanding, to learn those success skills that John talked about earlier. And it's really critical. The things I talked about just a minute ago really tie into areas that we work with folks and thinking about, like, what's the culture and what are the infrastructure that needs to be in place. And the culture is like, you as a leader are making it okay for Ari and Talena and Brian and Marjorie and Martha and Joe and Tom to try it and go in and know that they're going to do their best. They're going to get a lot of things right, and they're going to not everything's going to work out perfect. And that sort of culture of safety and innovation is critical. That some of the infrastructure that needs to be put in place is like, when's that time for that learning? When's the time for collaboration? Projects don't necessarily fall in neatly in 45, 50, 55, 60-minute periods. How do you build some flexibility into the schedule? Elementary teachers have it sort of built in a self-contained classroom. They can be a little more flexible. Secondary teachers, it's a little more tough. Where's the collaboration time? What would it look like if like all the 6th grade teachers did the same project with their students and were able to share practice and share work across that department? Those are the type of things that can happen as you're thinking about, as a leader, building capacity too. Many folks build their capacity by bringing our national faculty to their staff. Others go to PBL World. Others join this webinar. Right on. What are you doing as a leader to build capacity on an ongoing basis once you have teachers starting to do PBL? What's your staff meeting look like if you're working on PBL with your teachers? What do department meetings and grade level meetings look like? They should look different. They should be looking like a student-centered or learner-centered classroom. You as the leader are the lead teacher. You are you have to model the way. So if you're asking teachers to move their practice and become more student-centered and using project-based learning, and you're still going to staff meetings where you're standing up and giving a PowerPoint presentation for 60 minutes, it's incongruent with where you're trying to make the move. So, and finally, we know it's important that, like Brian talking about, hey, standardized tests are real and we can focus on it and we can make it happen. That's one piece of evidence. What's the other evidence that you're gonna look for? The street data, the stories, the student work and artifacts that are coming out of this work, the level of engagement, what's happening with attendance, and what's the joy meter in your school, like when you're doing project-based learning? Because when we go in schools where kids and teachers are doing project-based learning together, that joy meter is way over on high, and you can capture that stuff. So as a leader, you're thinking about how you think about what's your data that you're working to do to continuously improve, not just the traditional data that we've always used.
Mm-hmm. Bob, I have a question. You kind of alluded to this, but when you ask teachers, why don't you try PBL, or what are some barriers to PBL, they often cite the need to raise test scores. So what can a school leader do to help alleviate that barrier?
I think it's important that school leaders get versed in the evidence base that's been developed over the last 10 years at least on project-based learning. PBL Works has participated in a few studies. We have them up on our website. We know, like, and other of our partners have done random control studies in elementary grades, the middle grades, and in secondary, where we're seeing students not only get all the things we just talked about, the engagement, the application, the success skills, but their standardized test scores went up. The elementary kids, middle school science test in Michigan, students in PBL approach did better. And in AP tests, students are passing at 8 and 10% more likely to pass the AP test if they did it in a project-based approach. So I think, Ryan talked about the either or. It's really the both and the and it's actually, you can increase your test scores when you do project-based learning well. We have data to prove that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bob. So I have, this question is for anyone that wants to answer it. but it's one of those $1,000,000 questions that I also see in the chat. So I see you guys chatting it up over there. But that question that always comes that says PBL is typically not the only initiative that's happening at our school. So how can we better understand and articulate the interconnectedness of PBL and other common initiatives like SEL, UDL, design thinking? We have STEM at our school. How does that blend? How does PBL blend with those initiatives?
Oh God, I hope y'all don't mind me starting. This has been my bane. So for all of you who haven't had the initiative fatigue yet, it's coming. All you got to do is stay in a school district long enough. I think I had stopped even counting how many superintendents I had in my district when I left in 2023. I just said, you know what, I'll get to know the next one next time. It was just so many. But it like everybody comes with something that they want to focus on. And when you're new, especially those of you who this is your first year, I noticed in the chat you said it's your first year. Some of you may have never been in the teaching profession before. It's just a lot to learn. And so truly, especially those of you who are coming along as support, trying to create like basically parallel languages, helping them see that sometimes some things is called the same thing. It's just a different name or different twist to it, that it's not a new thing, that it is just updated or it is a way to do it, will ease so much of the pressure, because they just trying to keep adding it to their plate as opposed to seeing how it arranges already with what you do. So truly going and looking and saying, okay, is this something we already have done or something connected to what we have done before? Okay, let me bring that up for those who came here. For those who ain't even been here, you know, you got here yesterday because the other person quit. And we just hired you yesterday. Okay, let's see what you understand. What is your common background? And let me bring that language to you and then match it to the PBL principles, because PBL principles are great to align with a lot of other things. But the key is language to me. Like you really got to help simplify that language and build bridges. But so many others have great points too. I can't wait to keep talking about this with everybody.
Ari, did I see you come on mute? You wanted to share something?
Yeah, sure. Real quick, I'll just share that, you know, sometimes it's okay that not everything is going to fit. And I don't think any of us want to sit here and say, you can do it all and all of it can fit within a project, right? So we actually at PBL Works, historically, we've had a way of thinking about this, of things that can go in a project and things that can go alongside a project, right? So we know, we've had conversations with early literacy teachers, right? Your kinder teachers, your first grade teachers, phonics, right? That's not going to fit all the time within a project. It might be able to sometimes, but not all the time. And so some of those things, it might be that your school has a mandated SEL curriculum and you have to follow it lockstep. Some of us are in those positions, in those schools, and you might have to do some things outside of a project. Ultimately, what we like to talk about is trying to aim for 2 projects a year. And what that means, if we can find 2 spaces in time, one in the fall semester and one in the spring semester, to do a project. What that means is that we're going to take that dimmer switch that Talene is talking about, and we're going to spend in that time 3-4 weeks, even 2 weeks, right? We're going to turn all those dimmer switches up and we're going to put some stuff in, right? We're going to put all of it in if we can. And during that time, right? So if we can carve out that time and say, look, we will continue to do the SEL. Is there some flexibility around our pacing calendar for some of these things? Because, oh, by the way, we are going to build those same SEL skills through the project. When you get kids collaborating with each other, they are going to have to negotiate how to work together. They're going to build those skills, right? The same skills that they would get out of that 10-minute SEL lesson you do on the side. They're going to get a more robust version of that through the project. And so it is a reality that it will not always happen, but for 2 times during the year, all of it can happen.
Thank you, Ari, for that. And I'm going to turn it over to John for one more question before we turn to the questions that our audience have for us. But I'm going to say, even as a school leader, when I was in my PBL wall-to-wall school, there were lots of things that we were taking on. And so we looked at what works for our students the most. Even as a school leader, we did dimmer switch approach, right? But we looked at, what is the authentic audience? And you guys have been talking about assessment so much. We even made assessment like a focus, like what does assessment look like in a PBL context, right? So what does it look like in a context? So we made that a school-wide thing where we made assessment part of the culture, where kids was like, what do I need to do next? I did my next steps. That's not working. Like literally they start talking the talk, because we put that before them as a part of, let's just talk about assessment, and let's do it informal. Let's do formal. Let's talk about what that look like. Let's talk about what it feels like and all those types of things. And so when we talk about initiatives, we did blending of what works within the context of what we were doing. Right. And so that's how we were being successful in pushing our students forward. John, I want to go ahead and let you close out that last question.
I had a question about creating buy-in, and it's first I thought about it for Bob, but anybody can answer this too. Like, what if it's like some people in the chat actually say, I'm the only teacher at my school that does PBL, or some of my colleagues are not interested in PBL. So how can a school create buy-in for teachers and I suppose in students and community also, but mainly if there are teachers who are not quite on board the effort, how do you start that ball rolling?
I was on a call the other day with Brian. He's got an amazing approach to this. Sorry, Bob.
Man, there you go, Ari. Thank you. That was a lot. I was thinking about that. Yeah, we were on the call.
Mark
Quick context.
By the way, Mark literally just said that in the chat. So
we was on the call with some teachers, just trying to help them understand some work that we're doing for next week. And they asked the same question. And we were like, go with the team, involve your colleagues, which is good to run as a team. So to answer your question, get some people around you that can run as a team. But sometimes you by yourself. And sometimes the ball is in your court and you got to make a play by yourself. Keep making that play. If you're the only one making that play, keep making that play. It does not, and you have to kind of have blinders on what's going on around you and some of the noise, because everybody's watching. That's one thing that I realized. Everybody was watching. And after a while, some of those lunchroom conversations, some of those on my off-period conversations, some of those hallway conversations, it started, hey, how do you do that? Like, what was that you were doing? I started involving them in some of the projects. I would send some of my kids to go do some practice mock presentations during their off period. So now they're seeing the things that's happening. So now I'm getting it. How do you do that? Like, that's what they're doing in your class. And now you start to enact the dimmer switch approach. These are some small things you can do. But if it's just you, that's all you need.
I like that, Brian.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would just add, like, in the whole, like, if you're a leader and you're thinking, I want this to happen for all my students, I want those 2 projects a year to happen. One place to start is where I started earlier, was the vision. And often that's captured in a profile of a learner, a graduate profile, thinking about what are the broader skills and dispositions that the community can agree that students need to acquire to be successful and joyful and happy adults, whether they're going to college or career or whatever they choose to do next. We found across the country that 80% of those have 4 things: critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. The 4 C's show up over and over again. So as a leader going through that process with your teachers and with the students and the parents, why not? Because we're all in this together. If you lay that out, that those are the skills and dispositions you want kids to do, like, what are you doing in your school, in your classroom, in order to make those skills happen? Like, how do you learn and practice those skills? Well, there might be some other ways than project-based learning, but it is the one that is the best, most direct. And like in the last question, it's the platter that can hold all the other initiatives that you're working on. While you're building success skills, you're also building literacy skills. While you're building success skills and literacy skills, you're building SEL skills. all these things come together in project-based learning. We think about it as a narrow approach. It's actually a really big platter that can hold a lot of good stuff for young people. So build the why. If you want to build this, people want to know why they're doing it, and that means the parents and the kids too.
Oh, okay. So can I add one more thing to this? Because this is so good. Okay, y'all said yes.
1 minute. Just kidding.
I would love for those of you who are really in here in the chat to like do this. So everything we have said is so amazing and so on it. But I want to give another practical point for those of you who again are in a building by yourself. Like that was literally me. I know it sounds funny. I'm a PBL coach, but in actuality, I was a PBL coach outside of my building. I had for years never a principal who supported me. For years never had teachers who wanted to play with me. That's what me and my husband say now. Like those people didn't want to play PBL with you. But I found community outside of my building. So I want you to know that sometimes you can get creative and get other people to come alongside with you that's not in your building. So my first collaborative project was with a teacher in Australia. We joined our classrooms together and had our students create basically travel plans for a local family to go to the other country. And so we just would work at different time zones that sometimes he was up late, sometimes I was up late, or I was up extra early to make it happen. But you can get creative. And now, I mean, everybody is very familiar with Zoom. Everybody's very familiar with like asynchronous aspects. Use this chat. Connect with somebody here. Say, hey, I'm by myself. Who else would love to connect with me? And let's start like talking with each other. And then eventually, like everybody said, the spark happens. I did start having people who were interested. I did start having people who realized my kids were changing their schedule to be in my room instead of their room. Like it was starting some fights sometime for real. But we got it growing. But while it was growing, I found community outside of my building. And again, like I said, in 2023, I finally had a principal who was supportive of me that I left. But from 2005 to 2021, it was just a Talena show in Northwest Class High School.
Watch that show.
I would too. Can you guys tell that we have such a passionate panel and that believe in the work that they do? And so, although we would love to continue this conversation, stay tuned. We do have to get ready to kind of close out our night. I'm looking in the chat to make sure that I did not miss any of the questions, but the team is on it. When somebody asks a question, I see some of our NF that's here joining us. Shout out to you guys. You guys are answering questions. Our panelists are asking questions, but you can continue to ask those questions. You can continue to join us. We do have 2 other sessions that are going to be coming forth in October. And so if you see my screen, we do have math and PBL. So you get to hear more of Talena and Brian's voices in the room. We're going to talk about, wait a minute, math and PBL. How does that work together? All those things. I'm not going to tell you all the secrets. Okay. And then we have standards in PBL that's coming up on October 10th. Make sure you sign up for those things if you have not. And also, if you want to just continue this discussion, continue the learning, lots of nuggets, lots of tips that were shared tonight. Take your phone, go ahead and scan that QR code. If you have filled out the Google form that we sent you, we will get to you. Just hold off. You'll get something between now and maybe next week. Let's not put time to that, okay? Don't put no time on me, all right? But I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna make it happen. But if you want to learn more, we are here for you guys. We have professional learning opportunities for teachers. If you just want to continue to grow, we have things that are at the school level. We have things at the district level. If you're interested in implementing at any of those stages, you want to learn more, please reach out to us, and we would definitely get that to you. Make sure that you shout us out on social media. You will be able to get this live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and I think we're also on Instagram. So wherever we are, make sure that you follow us and just share some feedback on how tonight's session went for you. And if you want to also get in touch with our panelists, we're going to share those things in an email with you. That's going to just say, thank you for coming. Well, that's the end of our time. I'm giving you back 8 minutes of your life. I didn't expect for it to go, like that great, but yes, I did. So we thank you guys for coming. Enjoy the rest of your night, your morning, your day, wherever you are in the world. We truly, truly appreciate you being with us on tonight. Have a great night.
All right.